Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to today's meeting of Mid-Suffolk District Council Cabinet. I'm Rachel Eburn. I'm the Deputy Leader of Mid-Suffolk District Council, and I'll be chairing this meeting. Unfortunately, the Leader of the Council, Andy Mellon, has COVID, so we preferred him not to attend a meeting in public, and neither did he. I think he's not feeling too good, so you've got me for today. Can I first remind you of some domestic arrangements? Please ensure that microphones are turned off when not in use, that you do not interrupt other speakers. Please switch off all mobile phones or turn them to silent, and also switch your laptops to silent, please. If the fire alarm should sound, please leave the meeting room by following the fire exit signs and meet on the Ipswich Town Football Club training pitch. Do not re-enter the building until you're told it's safe to do so. And we're not expecting a fire alarm today. Finally, we'll be using e-voting for this meeting on the modern.gov app, so please could members make sure they're logged in and ready to use the app. I'd like to remind everyone present that this meeting will be broadcast live to the internet and will be capable of repeated viewing. The whole of the meeting will be filmed, except where there are confidential or exempt items, which we do have at this meeting today. If you make a representation to the meeting, you'll be deemed by the council to have consented to be filmed. By entering this meeting as a speaker, you are also consenting to being recorded by the council and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. The council, members of the public and the press may record, film, photograph or broadcast this meeting when the public and the press are not lawfully excluded. If you're intending to do so, please could you inform the committee clerk? Thank you. Could I move to the agenda, please? So item 1, apologies for absence.
Thank you, Chair. We have then received apologies from Councillor Mellon.
Item 2, to receive declarations of pecuniary and other registrable or non-registrable interests by members. I'd first like to say that I'm a Director of Freeport, part of one of the items that might come up later in the agenda, under item 19. Any other member? Councillor Davis.
I think I've got a register of interest automatically for Debenham, because I've given locality grant to the same that's on the agenda for Seal this evening.
Thank you. Councillor Winch.
I thought we always have the same issue that for directors of the companies, council's companies, we're already exempt, so we don't need to declare.
That's correct. Thank you. Any others? No? Thanks very much. Item 3, that's MCA 2401, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of May 2024. Are there any points regarding the accuracy of the minutes? No. Could I have a proposer, please? Councillor Weller, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Winch, thank you. Do you want to do electronic or by hands? And can we agree that by show of hands, please? All those in favour? Thank you. Item 4, to receive notification of petitions in accordance with the Council's petition scheme.
None received.
Thank you. Item 5, questions by councillors.
None received.
Item 6, matters referred by the Overview and Scrutiny or Joint Audit and Standards Committee.
There are no matters referred, Chair.
Thank you very much for that. Item 7 is the forthcoming decisions list. Does any members of the Cabinet have any comments or questions on that? No, I take that to be none. Thank you very much. So if we can move to our first substantial item on the agenda. Rather than introduce every officer that's present at the beginning of this meeting, I've decided that it'd be easier to introduce people for each item. So for this item, we've got Sarah Wilcock, Director of Corporate Services. Amy's not here. Sam Lake, Head of Service for Customer Experience. Amma Antuyaboa, Head of Service for Housing Solutions. And Eliza Dale, Poverty Reduction Lead. Now, as I am also the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resource, I will be introducing this item today, and I'll make a proposal and then ask for a seconder. So the paper that we've got before you today is principally to help support residents who are still feeling the effects of the cost of living crisis, given that prices have risen faster than most working age benefits. And with withdrawal of some government support, such as cost of living payments and the withdrawal of assistance from the Housing Support Fund in a few months' time, we really feel that these residents need additional support from the council that we're able to give them. While the rate of inflation increase may have slowed, the impact of high inflation on prices is very real to our residents. So, in terms of what we can do, the easiest way for us to provide a direct support is via the council tax system and to provide additional funding to existing discretionary schemes. So as part of this paper, what we are doing is we're recommending that the council tax support for all residents in receipt of the council tax reduction scheme is up to £50 per applicant. And on top of that, with regards to the Household Support Fund, we are recommending putting a 40,000 financial top-up to match the withdrawn support in this scheme and to actually top it up so we can provide additional support to our residents. The total budget on this will be £125,000. In putting this together, we ourselves and officers have had many discussions with partners, including Suffolk County Council, Citizens Advice and other charities, and I feel that it's a really, really important initiative in order to support these residents. So I would like to propose the recommendations in the paper today, which are at, I'll just find the spot, at item 3, in section 3 of your papers, and specifically the recommendations are 3.9 and 3.10 because it's the Cabinet decision that will then go on to the Council for their approval. So if I could propose those and ask for a seconder, please. Councillor Winch.
I'm very pleased to second this report. I think there's two bits of background that Councillor Eburn's just covered. One is the cost of living crisis, and the other is the uncertainty about the support that the government has got in place in order to help these residents. There's a thing called the Housing Support Fund, which prior to the election is going to be stopped in October this year. Whether that now changes, we don't know, but we'll see what happens. So we've got a driver that we need to do something to support our residents most in need, but we've got a lot of uncertainty about the direction of government support. So this is a little bit, I think, of an interim statement, and then we can review where we go further forward. So the idea of the council tax support is that it's very easy to administer, it's very targeted, and it ties in with the fact that the council is associated with council tax, so somebody will get a credit onto their account immediately. So hopefully this can all be done in a month or so. With the Housing Support Fund, what we're doing is, because it's going to go, at the moment, end in October, we're going to make sure it continues for the whole of this financial year at a higher level than last year. So we're putting in play, it's very difficult for a small district council to tackle something like the cost of living crisis, but we're putting in place something that we will believe will really help residents in the short term, and then we can review longer term what we're doing. The other thing I'd say about the changes to our Housing Support Fund is we're slightly expanding the scope of what you do. At the moment it has really been for housing, but we're looking at things like fuel costs, transport bills, school uniforms, white goods, other elements that will help residents. So I would strongly propose that we support this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Winch. So we've had a proposer and seconder. Has anyone got any questions of the members of the Cabinet, please? No questions. I should say we've discussed this in great length with officers, and we had hoped to bring this forward last month, but this thing called a general election got in the way, so we've had lots of discussions on this. So if I could then open that up to debate. Does anybody wish to say anything on this item, please? Okay, I shall, as far as I'm concerned, I think this is a really, really important piece of work, and I think we really do need to do what we can to support residents in need and ensure that that they can help deal with the cost of living crisis and reduction of kind of government support. And as Councillor Winch said, it's a programme that we want to be not quite under constant review, but ensure that every year that we are really looking strongly at this to make sure that we don't leave anyone behind with regards to the issues around cost of living and that people are suffering with. So if I could then go to voting for this. So just to note, they've got a list of recommendations, and just a reminder, so that's from recommendation 3.1 through to 3.10, but it is only 3.9 and 3.10 that we are voting on today, and those are the ones that, and then Cabinet will ask that if that's approved, that the other recommendations 3.1 to 3.8 go through to full council on the 25th of July. So if I could ask the Governance Officer to... Okay. Rather than go to electronic vote, could we have a show of hands for this, please? That's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you everyone for that. And if I can just say thank you very much to the officers for all their work on that, and especially kind of, working with our partners and charities to ensure that we really have got the right scheme in place. So thanks for that. Okay, if I can move to item 9, and this is MCA 2403. This is the Stowmarket Town Centre Gateway Fund. And present here we've got Emma Latak, the Director of Property Development and Regeneration, and Lee Carvell, Regenerations and Capital Projects Manager. I'd now like to invite the Cabinet Member for Housing and Property to introduce the report. Thank you.
Thank you. We want to see Stowmarket become a thriving town with a thriving town centre and a great place for people to live in and visit. This proposal is specifically designed to stimulate new activity in the town centre. So this covers arts and cultural experiences, tourism, community activities, retail, small business workshops, etc. And this proposal should be seen as complementary to other initiatives that are going on to help stimulate and make Stowmarket a thriving town. This administration has already pushed ahead with a number of initiatives in Stowmarket, the most noticeable being the Shelf Project for new sports and leisure facilities and the redevelopment of the former middle school into 44 affordable homes. We also want to address the issue of empty properties in the town centre. I think the average for the east of England is 12.5%. Stowmarket is below that average at 8%, but it has risen recently. And we also wanted to make a link between what's going on in Gateway 14 and some of the profits that the council are making and directly put that into the town of Stowmarket. I believe that Gateway 14 is actually very beneficial to Stowmarket in its own right. It's creating a lot of jobs, a lot of high-skilled jobs, and we secured over £16.5 million worth of external funding for a skills and training facility. But this makes a much more direct link between Gateway 14 and the town. Two general points I think are worth making about the scheme. One is the idea of additionality. So the aim is to bring new things to the town centre, not subsidise competition to existing things in the town centre. And the other thing that's important is we need to ensure value for money. We're doing this not for purely commercial reasons, but for wider social and economic reasons. So one of the things this does is put in a clear, transparent framework for the way things are done. So the way we're doing this, we're proposing that a budget of 1.5 million is transferred from the Gateway 14 dividend reserve into a new reserve called the Stowmarket Town Centre Gateway Fund. And this fund is in two parts. The first part is working with landlords to bring underutilised or empty properties back into use. And there's three elements of this: possibly purchasing a property, possibly renting them out in the short term, or possibly refurbishing properties. And there'll be a structure for assessing this. So there'll be, is it in the right target area? Is it vacant or about to be vacant? Is the state of the property something that can be improved? Has it got a fair market value? And then there's a number of due diligence steps. So that's what you might call the property element of the scheme. Then there's an occupiers element of the scheme, which is really about finding a location for potential occupiers. So this will be new businesses, pop-ups or other ventures looking to launch their first store or space. And I've been through the sorts of areas that might be encouraged. And again, this will have a number of criteria to go through. So the additionality factor, minimum operating hours, financial viability, evidence of benefits. So there'll be a structure for assessing occupiers. There'll be initial expression of interest, and then that will be developed. So what will the council be offering? Help in finding high street or town centre accommodation, providing support for potential occupiers, signposting and other grants, and practical help with branding, marketing, shop front or other short-term support depending on the applicant. The idea is that the applicants will be assessed by the council and then will be referred to a stakeholder panel which will reflect the community. So I'll have local councillors, Stowmarket Town Council and maybe others from the Stowmarket community to be determined. A couple of questions that have come up that I thought I'd just bring up now. Why is it 1.5 million? Why isn't it 750,000 or 3 million? We wanted an amount that would make a difference, but isn't such a huge amount as to be a white elephant. We can review this as time goes on. There's two parts to the scheme, a property part and an occupier part. Should we have different budgets for the two parts? It's actually quite difficult to do that because we really don't know how this is going to run. Something that I think is important to mention is before the recent election, there was a proposal for an empty high street property legislation, which is quite significant in this context. And that planned legislation would have meant that if a high street shop had been empty for over a year, councils could step in and auction off a rental lease with no reserve price for up to 5 years. Now, I'd expect the new government to introduce that. If they do, that will be very useful in this context, but it doesn't exist at the moment. The timetable for this is to launch, assuming it's approved at council, is to launch straight after council with the first applications in the September timeframe. So I hope everyone will enthusiastically vote for this. Very quick summary, it's part of a number of initiatives to help develop the town of Stowmarket. It's specifically designed to stimulate new activity in the town centre. It will give us a framework to assess initiatives so that they can be assessed in a sensible time frame, and will be involving a stakeholder group. And I'd like to thank officers for getting us from A to B on this proposal in a very quick time, and the prospect of getting this launched very quickly as well. So thanks for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. So we have a proposer. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Davis.
Yes, I'd like to second this. I've been involved and feel that it is a ahead of its time venture that I look forward to seeing the progression of. I think Stowmarket is a prime venue for it to begin, and we never know, we might have more towns to help in the future as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So it's been proposed and seconded, and I'd just like to invite the lead member for Stowmarket, Councillor Lay, if he wants to say a few words at this point before we go to questions.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments from me. I think it's an exciting initiative that's aimed at enhancing the town centre and bringing some positive changes to the community of Stowmarket. As Councillor Winch highlighted, the vacancy rates are actually lower than national average, so I think that will be, one of the successes of this scheme. Positively, since the press release last week, we've had great feedback from businesses already, which I feel demonstrates their support and enthusiasm for this project. We're definitely confident that the upgrades and improvements made by the Stowmarket Town Centre Gateway Fund will not only enhance the visual appeal of the town, but will also complement the long-standing businesses and also the market traders that have been an integral part of Stowmarket for many years. The goal is to bring tangible benefits to the residents of Stowmarket, made possible by the development at Gateway 14. Understand the importance of creating a town centre that now meets the needs and expectations of Stowmarket residents, which is why we're committed to making sure this project adds some value to their lives, as well as taking a moment to thank the officers that have put a lot of hard work into this. I personally look forward to seeing positive impact in the town that I live in, and how it contributes to making Stowmarket a desirable place for both residents and visitors alike. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lay. So now can I open it up to Cabinet members and lead members if you have any questions for officers or for the member? No questions? Okay, thank you. And now if we could move to debate. Does anybody wish to debate this item or make any comments? Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I will just say a few words. I think I probably spend far too much time on social media, but anybody else that does also spend far too much time on social media will note that an observation that residents of Stowmarket make very frequently is empty shop fronts in the town centre. And I think this is going to go some way to addressing that. So I hope that hope this is going to be a really successful enterprise. It's good to know that we're investing properly in making Stowmarket a thriving town, and this is really going to be supporting that initiative, which is a key one for us as an administration. So I'll be fully supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. I'd like to make a few comments from the Chair, if I may. Firstly, since when this idea was first discussed, again, a lot of work went into that in terms of working out what's the best thing to do and how we can really get some funds into Stowmarket to help regenerate the town centre and bring everybody along with us. So I'm really grateful again to the officer team for their work on this, and it's been I think it's a really excellent proposal, and I think that shows in sort of the breadth of the proposal in terms of what it's covering. So I'm really pleased. So thank you again to officers for that. And I think one of the key things is it's kind of, while we say, and one of our priorities as administration is to support Stowmarket in terms of regeneration and making it really, even more fantastic place to live and work, we still have to put formal structures in place in order to financially support it. So this is our way of formalising that support for regeneration, and providing a kind of variety of means to ensure that we can use all the funding available for the benefit of Stowmarket, and both Stowmarket itself but also the wider area. I think it would be really beneficial. So I'm really pleased to see this coming forward, and we'll be supporting that. Anybody else with any comments on this? In that case, if we could go to the recommendations, which are on page 35, and there are, I'm not going to read them out, there are 6 recommendations, starting with recommending the investment framework in Appendix A, and then it gives the details of those 5. So the total funding to put forward is 1.5 million. So could I take a vote by show of hands, please, for Cabinet members? That's carried. All in favour. Thank you very much. And thanks again to everybody who's been involved in putting this forward. Okay, moving on. Item 10. This is MCA 2404. This is the Community Infrastructure Levy, that's SIL, Expenditure Programme for September 2024. Now we've got Tom Barker, Director for Planning and Building Control, here with us today. Christine Thurlow, Professional Lead for Key Sites and Infrastructure, and Joe Moy as well in support. So thank you for being here today and helping with this paper. We've also got, because one of the items in here is to do with Stowmarket Library, we're very pleased to welcome Bruce Leake, who's the Chief Executive for Suffolk Libraries. And Bruce has kindly said that if there are any questions he will be, that specifically relate to the libraries, he'd be happy to try to respond to those. So if I could now invite the Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure to introduce this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. It's very welcome to see this this item coming up, for how we are going to be allocating some of the SIL monies. SIL funding, for those that don't know, and many of us know, but that's an infrastructure levy that's levied on new development, mostly housing, and we as an authority gather all that money together, and we have a policy framework in which we then allocate sums of that money for, quote, community infrastructure. And I believe that the two bids we have today, the library bid that we have, I think it's the first library bid we've had, certainly in this authority, if not the wider county, but it's certainly the first one we've had in this authority. And yeah, libraries are precisely community infrastructure, I believe. And the report, I'd like to thank the officers for the report, as yet again another easy to read and follow report. Lays out all the technical details and the structure of the funding, etc. Before I move the recommendation, Chair, do we want to throw it open to the rest of the members if they want to ask any questions of the Chief Executive of Suffolk Libraries? Is that okay?
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. I think if anyone got any questions specifically at this point, if they come up to it.
Yeah. Now would be
For
good.
if it's for the libraries one, then
Yeah, now would
let's
be
go ahead for that.
I've got three questions. One is that the population of Stowmarket is expanding, so the library needs to expand. How long do you think we're future-proofing ourselves for with this proposal? The second question is, it doesn't seem to be any room for books, new books. Is that a problem or not a problem? And the third question is, can you say a little bit about feedback from residents?
Thank you, and thank you for inviting me here. I may have to come back to you on the third question. So, firstly, obviously, all of our libraries, and especially as a result of developments like this, are flexible spaces, which probably is going to answer a couple of your questions. So, yes, the population is growing. The population is growing in many of the sites, many of the towns where we have sites. And libraries are always a very flexible and adaptable service. So I would say, at least 10 to 15 years would be the duration of sort of the improvements that are being made and how long they would last to support the growing needs of the community. And one of the things that people probably don't realise about the library space is that most of the shelving is on wheels. So it can be wheeled backwards and forwards to make the space a larger and more flexible space. So that's what makes these types of projects really helpful for us, because it enables us to make the most effective use of the space in all sorts of different ways, which means that it is, to a certain extent, future-proof. So I hope that's answered your first question. In terms of the book stock, there are plans, I believe, to introduce some new shelving, which is wheeled to replace some of the stuff that isn't in there at the moment. And for every size of library, we have sort of a standard level of book stock, and the book stock that we have for Stowmarket Library, we believe, is suitable to meet the needs of the community, and we regularly check that every year anyway to ensure that the stock in any particular library is appropriate in terms of the volume to meet the needs of that community. And we have a dedicated team that look at that sort of thing. And we also have what's called dynamic stock, which means that all of the books in our libraries revolve around the 45. So if you want to make a reservation, for example, we can get any book to you, to your particular library, within a certain period of time. Sorry, what was your third question? Yeah, so we're aware of some of the feedback, particularly about parking, and we've taken some steps there to try and make sure that we've been working with local partners like the Scout Hut and the John Peel Centre to make sure that there is some residual sort of parking on offer wherever possible. Staff have been very well briefed about understanding the issues that residents have with additional volume of people coming to the site, and are now working really hard to make sure that all customers understand where it is appropriate to park and where it isn't. And we're also having some ongoing discussions via our colleagues in the executive team here with Suffolk Highways about introducing some more, even more higher visibility signage to make sure that it is really clear to customers where they can and can't park. So that's an ongoing process. It's not going to, be resolved overnight, but it's really important that we work with the local community, understand where those challenges are, and make sure we continue to sort of take that approach. And in terms of other types of feedback, You know, there's been all sorts of different things that people have highlighted, but I think the team here have worked really hard to sort of accommodate that feedback. And we, you know, our whole role is, you know, we are an organisation that sits at the heart of 45 communities across Suffolk, and we're here to serve those communities, and a big part of that is about feedback, understanding what people want and what they don't want, and we will continue through our locally based team to take on board that feedback and make sure we change and evolve whatever we're doing to meet the needs of that community.
Thank you very much for that. Anyone else got any questions for Bruce Leet from the libraries? I've got two, if I may. One is that the Stowmarket's grown a huge amount over the last few years, and obviously this project partly is in response to that. So in terms of the amount of space that's needed for a library, it feels that we'll sort of outgrow that space in a couple of years again. So is the plan therefore just to kind of keep looking at how the model sort of works and try to maximise that for the people of Stowmarket, or is there a longer term, 5, 10 years, whatever, plan to do have another kind of library area, as it were, that serves the town? And then my second question is, I understand Stowmarket Town Council had some outstanding issues, and I just wondered if you presented to them or it been in discussion with them about any of the points that they'd raised. Thank you very much.
In terms of sort of future-proofing the library, going back to that point, I think, you know, obviously it's a growing population, and in many of our sites I've already said there is a growing population. You know, because of the nature of our service and, like I said, the flexibility of the space, we can make it definitely work in that space for 10 to 15 years, but a lot will depend on what other community infrastructure appears or disappears during that period. So, you know, like I said, libraries are one of the few available universal spaces in most towns and villages now, although there are other alternatives, you know, that do some similar services to the ones that we do. So a lot depends on what stays and what goes, and that tends to drive footfall. What will definitely drive footfall is a refurbishment. We know that everywhere where either we've had a new site or refurbished an existing site, more people come. So we're prepared for that. And again, at the moment, the site will meet those demands. In terms of a future project, that is very much a Suffolk County Council decision and out of Suffolk Libraries' remit. Per se, obviously, it would they would have discussions with us, but I'm not aware of any projects that are upcoming of that nature. And it may be that they can provide more information there. In terms of the feedback from the Town Council, we have done everything we can to address the feedback that we've had. We've talked at length with local people. We've had many meetings. And had, you know, a couple of specific events at the library as well to try and take on board that feedback. And we've done everything we can to try and make sure that people feel comfortable with what's being proposed, and particularly that they've understood that we've listened to them and tried to respond to any feedback we've received.
That's great. Thank you ever so much, and really appreciate that. And again, thank you very much for coming and taking questions. It's very helpful. Thank you.
It's okay. Thank you for inviting me.
So if I could hand back to Councillor Stringer, who's introduced it, but I would need you to then propose second and so on.
Thank you.
So forth.
I'll finish my introduction and make the proposal. Thank you, Mr. Leek, for coming in. That's really helpful to answer those questions and to show that join up between the two councils. You did mention the John Peel Centre, so the second you mentioned that, I need to declare an interest because I'm a director of that. You did mention it. I think we got away with it. No, that's fine. That also does link into one of the issues about car parking locally. And then from my experience of volunteering at the John Peel Centre, there is a public car park that is literally 1.5 minutes walk, because I've timed it for those that say, you know, where do I park if I go to the John Peel Centre? Well, there's a perfectly good car park there, and it literally is a 1.5 minute walk. Now, that, you know, some people won't be able to make that walk that want to access the facilities, but there is also quite a bit of disabled parking in and around Church Walk. So I think that the parking issue, so long as we keep an eye on it, that should be manageable. Just wanted to mention that how this sort of ties in with the earlier focus on the town, with wanting to reinvest monies into the town of Stowmarket to make it absolutely thrive. And we absolutely want to make sure that the facilities we've got there also equally thrive. Going on to the second part of the proposal in 3.2, which is the play equipment in Debenham. When we changed all the boundaries for the wards, my last act as the district councillor for Cotton when it was part of Military Ward, was to make sure that we got £40,000 worth of sill from a development that had started there. All of that money was reinvested and more by the parish council to build some really, really nice play equipment. And declare another interest, my granddaughter uses it on an almost daily basis. So I can see that the value for money is being extracted out of that community. I think one of her first words was the word park, because that's where she wanted to go, to play on that brilliant new equipment. So I think that investment into recreation and play equipment in Debenham will be a really, really, really good investment and a really good use of the SIL money. So I don't hesitate to move approval on the recommendation under 3.1 and 3.2, Chair, and look for a seconder.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Please can I have a seconder for that report? Councillor Winch, thank you very much.
Yes, I'd like to second this. I always find the SIL report one of the clearest reports we get, and it really lays everything out so everyone can understand what's going on. And I really appreciate Bruce Lee coming along today. I think that's really helped clarify things, and the Appendix D in the paper was very useful for me as well. So particularly because it's quite a lot of money for the Suffolk Library Scheme, so I think that's really good that we've clarified that. So I strongly support this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winch. Now, have we got any questions from members and lead members in general on this SIL paper? No, I take that to be none, thank you. And anybody wish to debate this item or make any comments? No? I'd just like to make a couple from the chair, if I may. There's the two projects here today. There's the Stowmarket Library Extension and the Debenham Play Area. And I just wanted to make the point that overall, you know, Mid Suffolk collects millions of pounds worth of SIL, and it's really, really important that we go through this process that's really clearly laid out in this report in order to ensure that that funding for infrastructure gets out into our local communities. And so it's great to see not just the library and the play area project coming forward, but the whole list of projects that are actually under consideration and that are being, that the teams are liaising with to make sure that we can get those resolved and get, like I say, get those projects funded and money out into the community. And, you know, just to give you an example in the list, you know, we've got the sports project in Stowmarket with a potential 2 million. We've got a GP surgery with a potential 800,000 and a village hall with a potential 100,000 amounts from the SIL fund. So just to show sort of the breadth of what we're using with SIL. And again, it's really good to have such a clear way of actually being able to distribute that funding and get that approved through Cabinet. So with that, if no one else wishes to say anything, if we could go to the recommendation, please. And the recommendations are set out in the report on pages 50 and 51, and that's recommendations 3.1 and 3.2. So that is and I shall read these ones out, that the SIL expenditure programme and accompanying technical assessments of the following two SIL bids be approved, and that is the SIL bid for the Stowmarket Library Extension refurbishment and the bid for the Debenham Recreation Ground project for play equipment. And the Cabinet also asked to note and endorse the SIL expenditure programme, which includes a position in respect of approved SIL bids from rounds 1 to 12, as well as details of emerging infrastructure SIL bids. So if I could go to a vote on this, please. And again, I think for efficiency, we shall do this by show of hands. So Cabinet members, if you could let me know if you're in favour of these recommendations. All those in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much, and thanks again to the team that put this together. Thank you very much, and again, thanks to Bruce Lee particularly for coming in and taking the time out to answer questions regarding the library project. We really appreciate it, so thank you very much indeed. I'll just pause while we have some changing of places. Okay, we're now moving on to item 11, and this is report MCA 2405, and this is social value policy. And here we have the officers here we have in support of Melissa Evans, Director of Finance and Procurement, and Katrina Browning, Head of Service for Commissioning and Procurement. Now, this is, as the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, this is the report that I will be introducing. So, firstly, I'd like to say that our commitment as a council to deliver benefits to our communities is a key priority, and through everything we do, we want to ensure that we can show this. So whether it's with procurement, whether it's through the community infrastructure levies, which is shown in the previous report. But in this case, we want to be able to really formalise this through the procurement contracts and then ultimately embed that across the council. We should show how, through our procurement, we can help improve the economic, social and environmental well-being of our area, and in doing so, meet national guidelines as well as our own priorities. And this is very timely, both with what we want to achieve in our priorities as an administration and with the Procurement Act coming into force on October 2024. It does say 2023 in the papers, but it's 2024. And then we will be producing from this an annual social value statement. Additionally, what we want to be doing is going beyond the Act, so to increase the positive social impact, such as through local suppliers, use of volunteers and carbon reduction. And you'll see the details of that, particularly in a really easy to read slide in Appendix 1. So I'm really delighted to introduce this report, something that I've been pushing for a long time, and I'm very pleased to see this council taking up and us being able to put this forward. And I'd like to thank the officers for the work involved, because it is very technical in terms of what we can do in referencing various acts and so on. So, and plus with regards to commissioning and procurement, we need to ensure that legally we've got everything exactly how it should be for all of our suppliers and potential suppliers. So I would like to propose the recommendations in this report, and I'd like to ask for a seconder. Thank you. Councillor Stringer, thank you.
Very happy to second this, Chair, and I won't speak much on this other than to say it really feels like quite a bit of history, because we've been asking about policies like this, it seems, for decades, and to actually see it in black and white is actually quite remarkable.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Do any members and lead members have any questions on this? Councillor Winch.
If you were asked, are there any downsides, what would you say?
I don't think I'd say that. Well, I don't think they'd say there are any.
I just think it's a question we're likely to be asked.
I think so many organisations now, you know, in terms of their understanding of what they're producing and what they're supplying, you know, the expectation is such that, you know, we're not single units, whether you're an organisation or a person in this world. Everybody interacts together, and we should be all working together for the benefit of everybody. And I think with regards to the council, you know, that's what we should be doing. And I think equally, because of the training and so on that comes into play and the feedback with officers, I think those suppliers that maybe aren't used to it or whatever will be helped in that way to meet those requirements.
Yeah, I'm strongly in favour. I'm just prepping for the council meeting in case.
Thank you, Councillor Wince. I don't know if officers want to add anything to that answer. No? Okay. Any further questions from anyone? No? Does anyone like to debate this item? No? Thank you all. Okay, in that case, I just want to say again, thank you to the officers for this, and it's something that I think is really important, and what I'd be very interested is in the progress in terms of embedding this through the organisation, and also feedback from those organisations, whether they're businesses, charities, whoever, that then liaise with us in this regard to see their views on it. But I think it is, you know, vitally important work for us as a district council. So if we could go to the vote. The recommendation is 3.1 on page 161. Could I have a show of hands for those in favour, please? That's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks very much, everybody, and thank you to officers for your work again on that. Now, if we could move on to item 12. This is MCA 2406, the proposed development of the funding and grants processes. Now, we have several officers here today to support us on this item. We've got Di Robinson, who's the Director of Sustainable Communities and Economy. Is Vicky? Yep, Vicky's there. Vicky Mosley, Head of Service for Communities. Laura Butters, Community Grants and Development Manager. Sarah Jane Hack, Community Officer for Grants. Claire Reid, and yes, just sorry, you're hiding that, and Olivia Wicker, Process Improvement Officer. So thank you very much all for being here, and thank you very much for your for the information and so on put into this paper today. I'd like to invite the Cabinet Member for Thriving Communities to introduce this report. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hopefully, after the 176 pages that you all read for this meeting, that you were really ready and enthused to read our lovely action plan in our appendix. I will be brief because I do realise that there's lots on the agenda. So basically, we provide in Mid Suffolk a range of relief and funding across the district. And because of this, a review was undertaken which identified a breadth of provision within all the departments, specifically for the voluntary community, faith and social enterprise sector. A current position report is in the Appendix B, page 195, and all of our officers worked really hard on this, and it was brilliant to see the non-silo working that we had and the contribution that we got from all departments. A detailed grant and funding action plan has been produced with 34 actions which are within 5 themes. The plan works across the council to improve both the efficiency and the reach of the grant funding that we provide. I would like to propose that we approve this action plan and all the associated costs that go with it.
Thank you very much, Councillor Davis. Could I ask for a seconder, please? Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second. This. I think Councillor Davis has sort of set it out really clearly there. But I would also like to echo her thanks to the officers involved in working at pace, particularly the last bit, to bring the last bit off in dealing with our last-minute adjustments that we made with you. So thanks ever so much for that, particularly Laura Butters' team for pulling that together in the wee small hours, I think, to ensure that it was able to make it to this cabinet meeting. Yeah, I think it's going to be important for communities and residents to be able to access this to access this money more readily by virtue of the way that this action plan sets it out. So there's no huge volumes of extra money around, but putting it in a place where it's really much clearer what it's for, how to apply for it, and speed up some of those processes, I think is going to be really an efficient outcome of this action plan. So I'll absolutely be supporting it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's been proposed and seconded. So do members have any questions on this report? Councillor Winch.
I'm just looking at this after looking at the SIL report. And one thing that's really nice about the SIL report is it's very easy for somebody to see everything that's been allocated, everything that's proposed, what wards they're in, who is it affecting. You can really assess that. Is that something that is conceivably possible for the other grant areas? I know that might be there's a lot of small things, but maybe above a certain value, so you could get more visibility of what's coming down the track. Because every now and then in my ward, I'll hear somebody say, oh, yeah, we applied for a grant for this, but I didn't know anything about it, or that it was coming down the line.
Thank you, Councillor Mitch. Can I ask one of the officers to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that. Yes, absolutely, that is something we can do, and it fits within the action plan to work with comms around how we promote the grants that we're giving and what our BCFSE groups are doing. So that fits nicely in the plan.
Thank you for that. Any further questions? I think one of the ones that I'd like to ask was just in terms of the money that with the grants and that we provide, that often they're used for match funding, and therefore we bring in funding from other organisations. And just to get a sense of how much funding we bring in, because people look at these reports and think, so we as Mid Suffolk are setting aside a certain amount of money to fund various organisations. But what does that actually bring in? And I think people are really surprised when they realise how much money we're bringing into Mid Suffolk, and obviously where people are applying from other charities, other areas, that money could go anywhere, So, but the fact that we're bringing it into Mid Suffolk, so I just wonder if there is a figure on that, or there will be.
We don't have that figure at the moment, but it's one of the shared performance indicators that we're looking at developing across the district, so that collectively we can say how we contribute and bring extra money in. So we will.
That's great. Thanks very much for that. Any other questions from any members? Okay, thank you. Can we then go to debate? Does anyone wish to debate this item? Okay, I'd just like to add that I think this is a real excellent way of maximising our impact for our communities, and I think it's really important to see, and I, particularly the working across all areas of the council and enabling kind of that to be pulled together for communities, voluntary groups, organisations and so on. So I'm really pleased to see this coming forward, and it's got a nice, clear plan for going forward. So look forward to it getting going, as it were. So thank you very much, and thanks to everybody for all the work on that, both officers, and I know there's been a member working group on this as well, so thanks to them for that as well. So if we've got no further comments from anyone, if we could go to the recommendations, which are on page 176, and that is 3 recommendations, 3.1, 3.2 and 3.3, and the first one is to adopt the plan as detailed in this report. The second is that the Director for Sustainable Communities and Economy, with the agreement of Cabinet members for thriving communities, have delegated authority to make any amendments to that plan as necessary. And the third one is to report the progress of the plan back to Cabinet in 12 months' time. So if members, I could have a show of hands whether you're happy to accept those recommendations. That's carried. Thank you very much, and thanks again to everyone for the work on this. Thank you. If anyone... So we'll be moving on to item 13. This is MCA 2407. This is the response to the National Grid Statutory Consultation on the Norwich to Tilbury overhead line project. And again, as I said at the beginning, some of these items on this agenda have been delayed because of the general election. This is one of those, and at the same time, the statutory consultation deadline was changed to meet so that people could respond and it not interfere with issues around the general election. So today we have Tom Barker with us, Director of Planning and Building Control, and Bron Curtis, who's the Principal Planning Officer, who will be via hybrid link online if anyone has any questions for Bron. So I'd like to move straight away to invite the Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure to introduce the report. And just also, Councillor String, if you could note the supplementary paper, as it were. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. It's really interesting to be able to present this report to you today, along with the response that we are making as an authority to government, which is in the appendix. So what you have in the papers is all the technical bits and pieces and all the responses, etc. The actual response that we are making is in the appendix. Just want to make that very plain. Norwich to Tilbury, as it's called now, it used to be called East Green, I think it was the original title. I think I first became aware of it about 2.5 years ago in a online meeting with National Grid and our officer Bron Curtis, where there was a very grainy map came up with this proposal on it. And I remember thinking, that's very close to some heritage assets that I live quite close to. That's going to create a lot of interest and concern. And that has been the case, and quite rightly so. This is a very large infrastructure project. And almost it's a lot of the bits you can't see that also lead to serious concern. The construction of this pylon route will necessitate 13 million tonnes of stone being imported to create the temporary roads to build this thing. That alone is quite a serious impact on a number of the communities that this infrastructure will be passing through. And I just wanted to highlight, often people get accused if they react negatively to infrastructure like this as being NIMBY. I don't like the term, because people care about their landscape, and quite rightly. They care about their environment, and they care about their social structures. And infrastructure projects like this do affect all of those to a greater or lesser extent. And it's our job to make sure we harness almost in planning speak back to government those concerns and realise those in policy terms and leave those that are reading our response in no doubt as to how we feel. And I think this does. I want to pay special thanks in the production of this report and the subsequent response to Bron Curtis, who has been absolutely brilliant throughout this process. We've beamed her into many a village hall via Teams to sit and very patiently go through the process with people that often are feeling upset and emotional about it and not wanting to engage sometimes with the process. And every single time our officer has been beamed in virtually into these village halls or various rooms, at the end of her presentation, there has been spontaneous applause from the audiences. Now, to get applause from an audience when you're giving them bad news just is a testament to how the information is being given and people being felt part of the process. Whereas often people can think a project such as this is huge, too big to countenance. And I think those responses have been met with huge professionalism, empathy, and then been turned into a dialogue that hopefully will give the incoming government all the information they need to make an informed decision to actually look at the actual impact that this infrastructure project would have economically, environmentally and socially to Mid-Suffolk District Council. So I don't hesitate at all to move 3.1 and 3.2 on the recommendation and look for a seconder. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Weller.
Thank you, Chair. I'm very happy to second these two recommendations. I think Councillor Stringer set out and clarified the points that have been set out really clearly in our response to government, and I'd urge residents, particularly the 3 residents that spoke with me about this very matter over the weekend at Village Fete. I can't think of 2 weeks that have gone past where a resident hasn't raised this as a matter of import to them in my ward, and I'm sure the same would be reflected across the other wards that are impacted by this development. So I would urge residents to pick up a copy of this letter, which I know will then be which by the time they read it will be dated July and not June, but absolutely reflects the position of this council to object against the pylons as proposed at the moment. And I'd like to echo Councillor Stringer's appreciation of Bron Curtis's support in this matter, as well as Tom's in signing off the letter. I'll certainly be supporting the two recommendations. Thank you.
Thanks you, Councillor Weller. So we've had a proposal from Secretary. I'll go to questions, but just to make absolutely clear that the actual response is in the agenda supplement that came with the papers, so it's separate to the main paper. And also just to, the original deadline was a month ago, so it has been, not quite a month ago, but it's been extended, so that's the issue of dates, I suspect. So if I could open it up to Cabinet members and lead members, if they've got any questions for either the Cabinet member or for officers. Councillor Warboys.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think I'm going to second Councillor Stringer's comments on the forensic approach Bron's taken to preparing this report, and also the way the very positive way she's responded to emails. There is a deadline of the 26th for submission of this report, but will parish councils be informed that this is part of an ongoing process? It's a continuous process of collecting information, and that Bron is continuing to have a dialogue with National Grid with regard to their proposals.
Thank you, Councillor Warboys. Councillor Stringer, do you want to come back on?
I'm happy to answer that. I think National Grid are obviously, with government laying out the timetable that they're going to be running to, and obviously it's got affected by the general election. But I think you can see from our approach to that, the second we knew there was a delay coming into needing to respond to the consultation, we'd immediately sent our draft response to the parish councils for them to have a look at, to help inform them, and also for them to check to see if there was anything at all that we may have missed from our response. So I think, from me to you and to the rest of the council, I think we will be, if anything changes in that timetable, and from this authority, I think we will want to inform and doubly inform about what the timetable is and what it means. I'll issue a slight word of caution in that the last week there's been an awful lot of major infrastructure being approved by the incoming government. So I think the timetable may shrink as well as extend, rather like the warning you get on investments. I think the government is sort of setting its stall out in terms of moving very quickly and stealthily with national infrastructure. But actually, what we can rest assured is we've given them all of the detail on a very granular level as to the huge challenges this project brings about, and itemising an awful lot of the environmental damage that will happen as a consequence.
Thank you, Councillor Stringer. Councillor Winch. Any further questions for either officers or the lead member? Okay. Would anyone like to debate this item? Or make any comments? I would like to, if I may, and I wasn't in, and I think I just want to say I kind of really welcome the extensive work that's been done on this. And I think, as has been mentioned by Councillor Stringer, the fact that when this, a draft of the consultation response is put together and it's sent out to parish councils, and I for one sat in parish council meetings where the parish councils were referencing it in order to put their own response together, and then did their own response, but highlighted their own specific local issues that they had in their own response. So that was extremely helpful. And also just picking up on a couple of things that also been mentioned, I think we'd like to see the new government really grasp the nettle with a strategic approach for energy. I mean, at the moment, we're still dealing with one of these at a time. There's one infrastructure project, then another one. There isn't a strategic process for them all. And this is something that the previous government failed to do, and resulting in this sort of piecemeal process of applications which we at a district level then have to deal with, you know, even though they're national strategic infrastructure projects. So, you know, I would like to see my plea to our new MPs would be if they can get government to actually, you know, have a more of a strategic approach on all of these national infrastructure projects, including the energy ones. I think that would be really beneficial and give some certainty, whichever way it is, for our residents. But as I say, I'm really pleased with the quality of the response that we're giving here back to this consultation, and the breadth of it in terms of what we as District Council, where the expertise of officers and areas is. So that's really great to see. So thank you very much again to everybody involved in that. So if nobody else has got any things I want to raise, if we could go to the recommendations, which are on page 217, and there's recommendations. 3.1 is to respond to the consultation, for which that response is in the agenda supplement, and 3.2 is that the Director for Planning and Building Control, in collaboration with the Cabinet Member for Heritage Planning and Infrastructure, consider any proposed amendments to the suggested response and be authorised to make amendments before submitting a response to the government. So if I could take a vote on that by show of hands, please. That's everyone. Thank you very much, and thanks again to everyone who's worked on that. And Ron, if you're listening in, thanks again for all your hard work on this. Thank you. Now we will move to item 14. So this is MCA 2408, and this is the General Fund Financial Outturn for 23-24. Now, as I am, it's back to me again, the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, this is a report that I will be introducing. And first, I'd just like to welcome officers available today. That's Melissa Evans, Director of Finance and Procurement, and also Karen Watling, who's the Head of Service Finance, and she is online via a hybrid link if we have any questions that we need help with. So in introducing this report, obviously this is the General Fund, which is the main fund of the District Council for 23-24. And just to note that the 23-24 budget was agreed in February 2023, so, you know, nearly a year and a half ago. And I think under the previous administration, as it were, because this new administration came in May 2023 with that budget set. And the key point really for the General Fund Outturn is that we've got a further £975,000 of surplus for the budget. Now, this is primarily due to a few things. The methodology for setting the recharge amount for the housing revenue account meant there was 1.4 million of additional income that came into the general fund. But this has also been offset by overspend in operations. And interestingly, the overspend there was actually caused by a reassessment of the budget in July 2023. So when new managers came in, so too late for the budget, but you know, a good reassessment was done. And also overspends in electoral services and land charges, which are caused by a variety of issues. And of course, the other impact on the outturn for 23-24 is the changes in interest rates that weren't necessarily forecast at the time of the budget. A couple of points to note are that we needed to make a payment for the enterprise zone, which is to do with Gateway 14, as the Gateway 14 business rates income wasn't due until 24-25 this year, but we had to actually settle that payment in the financial year of 23-24. And also, with regards to, we'd been expecting throughout the year a downturn in planning income, and that was forecast particularly at Q3. And this kind of rallied towards the end of the year, but partly due to some new large applications, but also changes in government fees. So that's kind of offset those amounts that have been incoming to the council. There hasn't been much change in reserves during this time, as we've spent a lot of the year trying to work out various issues on existing projects and trying to get them into a sensible economic kind of situation. And the capital programme mainly represents a kind of complete overhaul of what was planned to be delivered. I mean, much of it possibly not expected to be achieved, but still left in the budget time. You know, an example is, for example, a refurbishment of the Stowmarket Leisure Centre, which was in the capital budget, but at the time, no one had planned out when that might happen. Equally, capital funding for a new depot, and at the time of the budget, that hadn't been planned out as to when that's happening. So that's why there's some kind of major differences there. So overall, I'd just like to thank all the finance team. They've been under a lot of pressure over the last year for various issues, and I would like to thank them for all their hard work on this. So thanks to the team there. So I will be proposing the recommendations as they are on page 281, and I'd like to ask for a seconder, please. Thank you. Councillor Stringer.
Yeah, I'm happy to second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. Do we have any questions from members on this report, please? Councillor Winch.
Yeah, sorry, I should have noticed this at a previous meeting, but the figure we have for interest payable to SIFCO, that isn't a figure that I recognise, so I presume that is just the ring-fence SIFCO loans, because the amount of money to SIFCO is something like 1.4 million, not 400,000.
Yeah. If you'd like, yeah, I mean, I can confirm it over to you.
Yeah, that is the PWLB loans that we've got for SIFCO. The rest is in internal interest payable. Yeah, be correct.
Thank you. Any further questions? No? Anybody wish to debate this item? Richard? Councillor Winch, sorry.
Just a comment, really. I mean, I think it's really good that we've got such a healthy general fund. Always slightly alarmed when numbers bob around too much, so we moved 2 billion from the Q3 to the Q4 view, but that is really just in the main down to the calculation of interest for the HRA. So going forward, everything should be a lot more stable, but it is good that we've got such a healthy general fund.
Thank you, Councillor Winch. I think one thing I'd just like to add is obviously this is looking backwards, and going forwards, there's a lot of things that are in place or are happening at the moment, from cash flow forecast to relooking at interest across the whole organisation to reprogramming the capital programme. So there's a lot of work going on, and to ensure that in terms of how we're both reporting and understanding the financial situation we've got. So that's moving forward, but at the moment, this is the position looking back. So that's what we need to be looking at today. So anybody else with any comments? No? Okay, in that case, if we could go to the vote, please. That's on, there's recommendations on page 281, and that is that the 23-24 General Fund financial outturn of 975,000 underspend compared to budget as set out in this report be noted, that the 4.65 million transfer to the Thriving Communities Fund be approved, and that the capital carry-forward request totalling 142,000 also be approved. Could I have a show of hands for all those in favour, please? Thank you, that's carried. Moving on to the next financial report. So this is item 15. It's MCA 2409. It's the Housing Revenue Account Financial Outturn 23-24. And again, we've got Melissa Evans, Director of Finance and Procurement here. We've got Karen Watling, Head of Service Finance via the Hybrid Link. And we've also got Jenny Smithies, the Finance Business Partner for that particular part of the Council's business, available for questions. So as the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, I'd like to introduce this report. Now, the budget for this was set again, as I said, for the previous one, in February 23, and it was set with it for a deficit of 816,000. Now, the actual is 3.7 million deficit, which means it's up or down, as it were, by 2.9 million. Now, that's a huge sum of money, but the key issues with that are within that 2.9 million, there's 1.4 million of that was omitted from 23-24 and also the previous year, I understand, with regards to interest payments on loans. And we've also had nearly £300,000 in increased interest rates. So that's had a huge impact on the council over the last year for the housing revenue account. Secondly, we've also had to deal with a lot of compliance issues this year, and we've got around £500,000 on fire safety compliance, which hadn't been previously identified. Plus, we've had to authorise spend of nearly £700,000 on housing repairs, where the backlog of repairs had built up, and we've effectively had to do 2 years of repairs in 1 year. So adding those sums together is what provides the nearly 2 million of discrepancy with what was set at the budget. And I think just to highlight that, as is really detailed in the report, that many properties haven't had sufficient work done for many years. And so that's an issue that we've had to deal with as an administration over the last year, and perhaps the previous budget didn't quite anticipate the work that needed to be done. And again, while this is looking backwards, it has raised many issues that need to be dealt with, and I'm really pleased to say that they are being dealt with, and we've got a very good team in place that are looking at every part of this housing revenue account, from the minutiae in the finance in terms of how we can ensure the cash flow and so on is improved, to the actual housing service, and in terms of maximising how we get repairs done, how we ensure we meet compliance, and how we ensure that our tenants are safe and comfortable in their own homes. So I would like to propose that we accept the recommendations here, and I'd like to ask for a seconder, please. Councillor Winch.
I think I'd like to second this. I think Councillor Eburn's outlined the main issues. I mean, it's quite hard when you look at these numbers to get your mind around nearly a 3 million overspend compared to budget, but we've got two elements in here which I think are really accounting quirks, and that is the interest charge recalculation and also the depreciation change, which we're going to clarify a bit more in the future. There's just under £1 million variance in the core service, and I think that is quite explainable. We've been trying to put right a service that in the main has been failing. We've had compliance issues, we've had issues with the sheltered accommodation, we've had a huge backlog of repairs. But the end result is that our reserves are now just below 2.4 million. And we've got a budget forecast of 960 next year. So this report rightly notes that there are serious concerns with this outturn position and its potential impact on the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Do any members have any questions on this, please? No, I just want to stress that we have been over this a lot as a cabinet in terms of what we can, with that whole situation that we've got, and what can be improved on this. So lack of questions isn't lack of concern or involvement. Anybody wish to debate this item? No. Okay. And I just want to add that we are, as Councillor Rich says, we're really aware of the position that we're in, but I think that the team, but working with the team, we've got some really good ways forward, and I think it's really positive that we can do going forward. We just need to ensure that we take every advantage to improve this situation over the next few years, and there'll be further papers coming forward in due course with options for doing so. But as I say, for this one at the moment, this is looking back for 23-24. But going forward, we have got work to do, but everyone is really keen to do that and bringing lots of good ideas and so on to the table as to how we can do that. So if no one's got anything further to say, thanks again to the officers for your work on this, particularly when it's at year end and we've got auditors coming in and so on, and plus a new financial system being put in place, so it doesn't rain but it pours. So thank you very much for all your work on that. If we could then go to the recommendations on page 299. And there's three recommendations. 3.1, that the 23-24 housing revenue account financial outturn as set out in this report be noted. 3.2, that the transfer of 3.713 million being the housing revenue account reserve deficit for the year from the strategic priorities reserves be approved. And 3.3, that the housing revenue account capital carry forward requests totaling 1.014 million be approved. Could I have a show of hands for those recommendations, please?
Yeah, that's carried, Chair.
Thank you, that's carried. Thank you, everybody, for that item. Moving on, item 16. So we are now moving on to report MCA 2416. That's the Q4 23-24 Mid-Suffolk Performance Report. Now, this is a report looking at the last quarter in terms of our performance, and we've got Sarah Wilcock, Director of Corporate Services, and we've got Joe Hobbs, Head of Strategic Policy, both here to help with any questions. Now, this report would have been introduced by Councillor Mellon, Leader of the Council, but also Cabinet Member for Performance and Resilience. So he's obviously not able to be here today, so I will just say a few words to introduce this report. And firstly, just to say that we've also had many discussions about performance, and one of the things that we want to ensure that we do is actually link performance to our new priorities in administration. So while this is looking back at the last quarter, and the last year was still the priorities from the previous administration, it's a kind of work in progress really in how we kind of go forward and make these things kind of joined up and actually really report what's important and ensure that we're picking up the right elements within what the council is doing and in then ensuring that we act on them, and both reporting them to our communities and our residents, but showing where improvement needs to happen, and so on. So the report is quite different from the last one that you will have seen, and we're now reporting against our 4 strategic themes, which come from our Mid-Suffolk plan. So that's housing and infrastructure, resilience, community wellbeing, and environmental sustainability. And we've got the new format comes from our new performance management system, Pentana, which helps us to focus on the key performance indicators. And in time, we'll be adding more detail on the progress against the action plan, and we'll be building on that in future meetings. So the report shows positive progress in many areas of the council's work, including reducing homelessness, supporting neighbourhood plans to be developed, and in call waiting times. But as obviously as you know, those of you who've read the report, you'll pick up that there's areas that we aren't doing so well, such as in repairs in housing and tenant satisfaction on that, for example. So, but we want to make sure that we're clear about what we're reporting on. We're not just reporting where we're doing well, and we report where we're not doing so well. But in both instances, we should always be looking to improve. You know, just because we might be doing well in an area, we need to, ensure that we're working to the best that we can. So we will be continuing to work on this and making sure that those KPIs within that report are something that we can act on and we can deliver and show our communities the value that they are receiving. So with that in mind, I'd like to just thank the officers for their work in putting forward this information today, and I'd like to propose the recommendations for this report, which is just for noting, and I think I still need a seconder for that, please. So if I could ask for a seconder. Councillor Winch, thank you very much.
Yeah, it's really good to see this report now structured in a format that reflects our priorities. There's still a fair bit of work to do to get all the measures in place, and a lot of that's down to us, so I accept that we need to work together to do that. As Rachel said, as Councillor Eban said, it's really important to get the good and the bad. We're just trying to reflect where we are so that we can improve things. And I think there's a lot of measures in here and a lot of comments in here that will be of interest to a general resident to be able to monitor how we're performing. So I look forward to this getting expanded further in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So it's been proposed and seconded. Does anybody have any questions, please? I'll kick us off with one. I noted that on the I'm trying to find the right page now, that we report on, for example, green bin collection, but it's not under the environmental sustainability bit because it's a revenue to the council, so it's kind of reported in that area, but personally I feel that should be under the environmental sustainability part. So there's a few things like that, and I just wanted to check with the officer that that is something that we can change as we wish.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Eburn. And yes, certainly we can move that. It's entirely your report to demonstrate the progress as you want to, and that makes perfect sense to move to environmental sustainability. So yeah, welcome any changes.
Thanks. Does anyone else have any questions, please? No? Okay, no further questions. Would anyone like to debate this item? Councillor Weller.
Not so much a debating item, but neither a question, so I'll raise it here, and it's just to echo Councillor Winch's remarks about some missing features on here, which I can see some have got my name attached to them as well. So, yeah, some further work to do with senior officers and setting some targets against some of these measures here. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Weller. Anybody else for debate or comment? Okay, I think as it, it is effectively work in progress, but it's great to see this coming forward for the last quarter of last year, as it were, last financial year, because it means that then for the first quarter of this year, we'll be able to kind of hone this in terms of having consistent reporting throughout the whole financial year. And so I think I'd urge Cabinet members to kind of discuss with their appropriate teams anything else they wish to see added into it, and obviously we'll be discussing it in more detail, both informally and when it next comes forward at the next Cabinet meeting. So thanks very much again to officers for their work on that, and if we could go to a vote on this, please. And the recommendation is to note the report, which is on page 309. So if I could have a show of hands for all those in favour of that, please. Thank you very much, that's carried. Thank you very much, everybody. So we now need to move into a confidential session and close the meeting. So item 17 is exclusion of the public, which term includes the press. So to consider whether, pursuant to Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, the public should be excluded from the meeting for the business specified below, on the grounds that if the public were present during this item, it is likely that there would be the disclosure to them of exempt information as indicated against the item. The author of the report proposed to be considered in Part 2 of the agenda is satisfied that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing that information. So if I could have a proposer to close the meeting, go into closed session, please. Councillor Stringer, thank you. And a seconder? Councillor Winch, thank you. And could I have a vote by show of hands? That's carried. Thank you very much. So the session is now closed. Thank you.